That's right. You're listening to another episode of the Co-Main Event Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. I'm Chad Dundas. That's Ben Folks. We're both longtime MMA journalists, and for the last 13 years, we've been meeting here every week to break down all the action in the wild, weird, and occasionally wonderful world of mixed martial arts. And Ben, it was wild, weird, and wonderful at UFC 323 over the weekend. Allegedly the last card of the pay-per-view era. And if that turns out to be true, what a crazy night of fights to end on, as both titles that were on the line changed hands in dramatic fashion, one more definitively than the other, obviously. Your new champs are Petr Yan, who honestly could not have come better prepared for this fight, as he took the men's bantamweight title off Merab Dvalishvili in a 5-round thriller. And of course, he had Joshua Van after Alexander Pantoja injured his arm at just 26 seconds into the first round and couldn't continue. He was crowned champion. Goes without saying, we got an awful lot here to discuss. We got a lot of listener mail we have to get to. I don't know exactly how far we'll get discussing all these fights, but hopefully we can do the night some justice here. Let's start with Petr Yan, who unexpectedly came into this fight with Merab just up to the challenge, and then some in every area. The guy was impeccably prepared. He stopped Merab from really any substantive takedowns in the fight. He was so effective on the feet, going to the head, going to the body, putting on a clinic that people will probably use as a blueprint to try to beat Merab moving forward. And maybe most importantly of all, he matched the cardio step for step. What can you say, Ben, about Petr Yan, who honestly could not have had a better fight?
Yeah, matching the cardio honestly was very impressive to me, because I think it was around about the third round in this one where I was starting to go, holy shit, Petr Yan is winning this fight. I think you could make a case that he won every round here. I heard John Wood, Merab's coach, being like, I thought it was 3-2 us. I think he told Merab at some point after the first 3 rounds, you're up 3-0. And I was like, nope, I don't think so. Because Yan was doing all the damage. Merab, he had some moments where he was able to kind of control him up against the fence, but not really the kind of control that we're used to from Merab, and was not really able to do much with it. And I was looking at Petr Yan looking like he was banking rounds, and I was going, man, he looks like he's on his way to winning this, but also looks like he's starting to slow down a little bit. You could see him starting to get just a little bit sloppy toward the end of the third, looking a little bit tired. And I went, is this where Merab's endless cardio, the bottomless well of Merab cardio, is that going to be his undoing here? Because there's this fight, as always is the case with a Merab fight, was at such a high pace. And Petr Yan was able to keep up with it. And I was just thinking, man, he's going to fall off here. He's not going to be able to keep this up for 5 rounds. I was fucking wrong. I was way fucking wrong, man, because he just seemed to get better in rounds 4 and 5. Those body shots were really working for him. You can hear Merab screaming. Just like some Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall shit. And he didn't want to. He didn't want Petr Yan to know how bad those were hurting him. They must have just been really that bad. I really appreciate before the 5th round, you see them back in their corners, and Petr Yan's corner by then, we weren't doing technical advice anymore. The technical advice, that hay was already in the barn, and it was working. All the technical game plan stuff they had was working. Instead, they said, go out and beat the shit out of him. The kind of advice that your friends like in 7th grade would give you before a fight at the park across the street from the school after school hours. And you know what? He did. He went out there and he just beat the shit out of him. He never got to a point where he was fighting safe, fighting to protect a lead, doing any of that stuff. He was just straight up putting it on Merab, and you could see it all over Merab's face by the end.
Yeah, even on the broadcast, they were saying early on in this thing that when you're fighting Merab, you got to win the first 3 because he's going to outlast you. He's going to win the last 2. And that just did not happen in this fight, which was shocking to me. And, Merab was out there making his attempt to become the first UFC champion to make 4 successful title defenses in a calendar year. Obviously, that effort ended here. I think it will be easy for people to say that the activity got to him, or did the activity get to him? And I got to be perfectly honest, man. I don't know that I saw that out there. I saw Merab come in, Merabed out, man, ready to Merab. And then I will say, I think this was a close fight. I think that every round was close. I don't disagree with you that Petr Yan could have won all 5. It could have been 3-2. It could have been 4-1. I thought it was close. So I don't mean this to sound as negative as it does, but like, it was kind of like Merab had nothing for him, man. Like, he landed some shots on the feet. He was able to work his game a little bit of getting Petr Yan up against the fence, of being super aggressive. It's just that none of it did anything, man. Like, none of it seemed to phase Petr Yan even the slightest bit, which was astonishing to me.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at just the striking stats, like just in terms of like total strikes,
Yeah.
Merab, I believe, outlanded Yan in all but 1 of the rounds. I think round 3 was the only one. And there, Petr Yan landed 33 of 55, whereas Merab landed 32 of 77. I mean, Merab threw a lot more and at least was on the punch stats landing, but he was not landing the more impactful blows.
Yeah.
There was several moments in there where Petr Yan seemed like he was really hurting him with stuff. Honestly, I agree that I didn't look at that fight and think Merab looks like he doesn't have it. I never felt like that. I felt like Yan looks like he has figured it out. He's figured out how to deal with Merab's whole shit. Somebody posted this on Twitter earlier today, and I thought it was a good point, where it showed like a kind of a montage of, I think we've talked about with Merab's style before, that he will kind of always be doing something. And a lot of times that something is just sort of pumping out jabs, pumping out punches from a distance that's way too far to land them. But he's just sort of doing something to give you something to look at, testing out the range, all that stuff before he moves in, before he attacks. He's just always doing a thing. And here it was a montage of every time Merab goes to throw any kind of jab, whether it's the kind of jab that he's really seriously trying to hit you with, or whether it's just a sort of test in the range jab. But he pumped out that jab, and it was automatic. There was a jab coming back at him. There was something coming back at him. Petr Yan was touching him with that jab all night, but also just like not letting him have anything for free. And that, combined with shutting down the takedowns, I think you saw Merab get into a situation where it was one of the rare times where he seemed like he was having a type of fight that was not the type of fight he wanted. Yeah. And that almost never happens to him. Now, he said afterwards where he was like, I didn't want to have a boring fight. I tried to come out here and stand and fight with them more. Doing a little bit of, hey, I played his game and that's the only reason he won kind of thing. A little bit of better man tonight sort of post-fight interview stuff that everybody's going to do. But then you go back and you look at the stats and you're like, my man, you tried 29 takedowns.
Yeah.
You were credited with 2 takedowns and on 29 attempts. Petr Yan got 5 takedowns on 9 attempts. So don't act like, hey, I wanted to keep this one standing. You had 29 takedown attempts. You definitely wanted to get it down there. You just couldn't. And when you did get him down, you couldn't do anything there. He was right back up. You couldn't control him for like a second.
Yeah, those 2 takedowns were not particularly substantive or effective, right? Yeah, it's always interesting when someone makes a statement as though we haven't seen the fight. Right? Like they're going to describe it to us.
Aftermath of the fight, you got dinged up a little bit. Maybe you're not thinking all that straight, but yeah, you're going to say some stuff. I don't hold that against him too much. It's the Conor McGregor years later trying to talk as if we haven't seen the fight. That's the one that is really shocking to me.
This was a pretty big, I don't know if you want to say redemption story, but obviously Petr Yan lost to Merab back in 2023, comes back, dominates him three years later. It's his second title reign with an interim title win also thrown in there. And it's like, he was a guy that it felt like we had kind of shuffled to the side.
Yeah.
Like we were kind of like assuming that we had seen the best of Petr Yan, and then he comes out here, and honestly, you don't know how things are going to go from here, right? But he has a chance now to be one of the greats, right? Is if he can run this title reign out a couple of wins, then you're going to have to look back and say, yeah, Petr Yan, 2-time champ, beat Merab, had several title defenses. He's probably on the list somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's especially impressive because that first fight was not particularly competitive, and almost no one was given him much of a chance in this one. It just felt like we're out of ideas at bantamweight. Merab wants to fight one more time this year. Petr Yan's there. Might as well give him Petr Yan. You'll note that one person on the Uncrowned staff picked Yan to beat Merab.
Yeah, but
Exactly
you
one person.
even said at the time that you didn't actually think he was going to win. You admitted last week that you only picked him as a strategic move to try to not finish last.
Senator, I do not recall ever saying that. You can't prove I ever said that. All I know is that I picked him and nobody else picked him.
Well, what about the part people care about, though? Will we have a trilogy?
You know, it kind of seems like you have to at some point. Whether that point is immediately right now, I mean, I could be persuaded in a lot of different directions. I'm not a huge fan of the immediate title fight rematch. It also depends, I guess, how long, how many weeks pass, how many months pass before you're looking to book another bantamweight title fight. But this was such a good fight, such a fun fight, and just a fascinating one to watch. If you said we're doing it again, brother, I couldn't get mad at that. Yeah. I'd be real interested to see how it would play out. And I think that a lot of people, especially if you are one of the people who wants to think like, oh, Merab just packed too much into this year and it caught up with them, give them a few months off, give everybody 6 months off or whatever, and come back, do it again, and we could find out. I don't know. This was one of those rare fights where, you have so many weeks in this sport where you're sitting through filler bullshit, uninspired bullshit, peppered with the UFC's right-wing propaganda machine. And you kind of go to bed at the end of these events being like, what am I doing with my Saturday nights? Is this really the best use of my time? And then this was one of those fights where you come away from it and I was going, wow, that is what you watch this sport for. A guy figuring it out, nobody giving him a chance, but he and his coaches came up with a great game plan, phenomenal execution, being pushed to the absolute limit of just human endeavor physically, and doing it, finding a way to get it done, to become champion again when people had kind of written him off. It's inspiring. It's like exciting. Like if you turn around and you make that fight again, yes, I will watch that fight again.
It is amazing in this sport how like one good night can pull you back in.
Yeah.
Right. It's been like that for a while, but it's just like one great night of fights can sort of reinvigorate your whole feeling about what's happening in this sport. You know what the bad news for Merab is? You know what happens next month?
January?
You know what happens in January?
New Year?
Merab turns 35.
Oh, no.
You know about that, the 35 rule.
Yeah.
It's not good. It's not good for the lighter weight guys. So if anyone contests that rule, it's probably Merab. But I'm just saying, fought a bunch of times this year, turning 35 in January. We'll have to wait and see, obviously. But hey, man, you've said it yourself a lot of times. Sometimes you just get old. Sometimes you get old in one night. I'm not saying that's happening to Merab. Like I said, thought he went out there looking Merab to the core and just couldn't get it done against Petr Yan. So we'll just have to see where we go from here. Where we go immediately is UFC 324, where you got Sean O'Malley fighting Song Yadong, which, depending on which way the wind is blowing here, all of the sudden potentially shapes up as a number one contender fight, at least for one guy.
I mean, The bantamweight division, I think, gets more interesting when you open it up like this and you go, yeah, okay, we got Petr Yan next in there. Marab suddenly doesn't seem like 2 weeks ago we were sitting here and it seemed like it's Marab and then everybody else stuck well below him, nowhere to go. And we were just running out of new bodies to throw into the Marab machine. Now, all at once, all these guys, Sean O'Malley, Umar, all these guys kind of have fresh life, you know? Uh, it's especially interesting to me because Sean O'Malley will be the guy to come up here and tell you that he is done falling off if you look at shit, you know? And I appreciate that level of honesty. That is one of the things that I think people have always gravitated to about Sean O'Malley. Is he's one of these fighters where he seems like if he were not physically able to be a fighter, he would just be a fan talking shit on message boards and on MMA Reddit and things like that. So that level of honesty, that level of awareness, I gotta think he knows, man, you gotta fucking win this one. But also, it's not an easy fight.
No, not at all. Remember, you're listening to the Co-Main Event podcast proper. This show drops every Tuesday afternoon for free in your timelines and podcast libraries. But if you want even more of the Co-Main Event, you can find Ben Folks and myself all week over on Patreon. Hit us up at patreon.com/co-main event. Get loads of extra audio and video content, as well as access to our official Discord message board, where they're constantly talking about fights and a lot of other stuff. Man, I tell you what, if you haven't gone over to the merchandise shop at comainevent.com to get yourself some Christmas stuff, to get your Christmas shopping in, you got a few days left if you want to ensure that those gifts arrive at your house by Christmas. If you want to go over and get the best-selling Daddest Man on the Planet coffee mug or the t-shirt for whatever dad figure exists in your life, you got to go do it now, man. I'm telling you, they've been flying off the racks. If you want to make sure that shipping gets done before Christmas, you got to go over there right now. Go to comainevent.com and click the link at the top of the page that says shop. As always, we partner with our friend, excuse me, Johnny Ashcroft on the shop. He's a graphic designer from Portland, Oregon. We can't recommend him highly enough for all your design needs. Hit him up at studiosuperconductor.com or on Instagram at studiosuperconductor. And right now, like we always do about this time, let's do a little bit of listener mail.
Listener mail. You all right?
Yeah, having a problem over here. Having a congestion issue. All right. First question this week comes to us from Chris Reaney, who writes, "It's the morning after UFC 323, and I'm watching the main event while cooking, and it's an amazing fight. But I had to pause things between rounds 4 and 5 after hearing John Anik say two things. First, commenting about the on-screen graphic of live betting odds, and then he mentions a text he's received from someone in the arena that Marab's jaw might be compromised, implied broken. Normally, I watch the fights on mute and listen to Charles Mingus, so maybe this is commonplace, but it feels like the UFC is walking a fine line between being a gambling vehicle and edging ever closer to nudging the steering wheel of said vehicle. In the realm of questions, comments, and concerns, this email falls in the third category." You know, I hadn't thought about this, but that is a thing that happened in this fight. Yeah. John Anik did, in fact, promote the live betting and then shortly thereafterwards be like, one of these guys could be fucked up. I've got a report from inside the arena that Marab's jaw might be screwed up. Now, at that point, we're far enough down the road in this fight that you might want to jump on the live odds anyway. But, you know, this doesn't hurt your cause if that's what you were thinking about.
Yeah, I chalk this up to more of the just pernicious influence of betting in sports in general that makes us look at everything differently, because it is not necessarily a new thing for a UFC commentator to speculate wildly about potential injuries. It's a little bit different that it's John Anik doing it when normally
Mhm.
that was the province of Dr. Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
You
If
will not.
somebody's going to read a text, you'd think it would be Joe.
Well, I guess the difference is at least like there was some sort of information coming from somebody else rather than him just looking at it with his fucking X-ray eyes and being like, I think his hand is broken. That's normally how Dr. Joe would do things. But like that was a staple of UFC broadcasts for a long time. And you didn't really think anything of it because you're like, well, he's just saying stuff. It does not affect anybody. It doesn't affect either of the fighters. The corners aren't really listening to him, and fans aren't sitting there with a casino in their pocket that they might attempt to take action on that information. So it just seemed like a harmless quirk of Joe's. Now, because of the betting, because we just look at everything through that lens, and especially when you have they are right next to each other in terms of things that you say into a microphone, then yeah, it starts to look like a little bit different. I just think that that's just kind of how we live now ever since we opened that Pandora's box.
You think if you were the person who texted that to John Anik, you might have been like, whoa, bud, thought that was between you and me, Johnny. I didn't necessarily put that out there for publication, for broadcast.
Well, what I wonder in something like that is it could mean a lot of different things, right? Like somebody in the arena.
Yeah.
And you would think that like we're talking about another fighter or a coach, somebody who's kind of like not just like John's bro who happens to like, they're at a bachelor party and they decided they'd come see the fights tonight and he's 32 rows back. You think that it's somebody very close up who knows what the fuck they're talking about. That's the implication there anyway. But it's also like, what are they basing that on? Like, is there a moment that they saw where you could look at him, put his hand to his jaw and wince or something? Like you'd want something more than that, especially before you were going in there and making your live bets, I guess.
What if the text was from Dr. Joe Rogan?
Whoa.
Did I just blow your mind?
Then I think that's a violation of doctor-patient confidentiality. I think that the Board of Imaginary Medicine should take issue with imaginary Dr. Joe Rogan on that one.
Next question this week comes to us from Devin Scott, who writes, it's understood that the UFC caters to a politically conservative audience, which might explain accepting an ICE commercial, but placing that ad immediately after Henry Cejudo's emotional farewell montage is next level tone deafness. The irony is profound. Cejudo is the embodiment of the American dream, yet his journey is founded on the sacrifice of his mother, Nelly Rico, who entered the country undocumented. This is a central, well-known part of his story. How clueless, ignorant, and obtuse must the UFC programming be to run an ad for the agency that abducts undocumented immigrants right after celebrating the son of one? The contrast between championing Cejudo's success and promoting ICE in that specific moment is astounding. Thoughts? Then he writes, I should get my blood pressure checked.
No, Devin, you're not the only one.
Yeah.
To note that.
He's not even the only one who emailed the show about it. We got several comments and concerns about this particular advertisement placement, I guess.
If the UFC was going to level any sort of defense of that decision, it would probably go something like, hey, all that stuff is true about Henry Cejudo, but he's a big Trump supporter. So he must be down with this, or at least it's not a deal breaker for him that Trump ushered in this show me your papers bit era of American government. So if Henry's fine with it, then who the fuck are you to say anything about it? To which I would argue that's dumb of Henry, but also maybe true. But it is just sort of like, I understand we taking any motherfucker's money if he giving it away.
Yeah.
And also that, the UFC does seem politically aligned with this stuff. So it does not see this as an issue, but you are driving viewers away and you're not picking up any just because they're going like, oh, they ran an ICE ad. Awesome. Can't wait to become a fan of this sport that I did not care about until now. Like that's not happening, but it is happening that people are seeing this shit and being like, fuck you, man. especially at this point. It's like, if you're out there, you got a smartphone, you got access to the internet, you have seen videos of ICE doing horrendous shit to people. You have seen them just like ripping people's families apart. You have seen them. Even Joe Rogan is out there on his podcast being like, "I thought we were going after the worst of the worst because I selectively believe everything the guy tells me." And even him being like, "That's clearly not happening. You were chasing people through Home Depot for daring to try to have a better life for their families." And like, everybody's seen that by now. And so then when you are the sports brand that's like, "Hey, you're watching our shit? Cool. We think you would be a prime candidate to join dumb Gestapo." I would understand how some people are going to take that and be like, first of all, fuck you for running this ad for me, and especially right after Henry Cejudo's fight, but also for thinking that I'm the demo for this. I'm going to go take a hard look in the mirror, and I will not be watching your product when I get it back. I mean, we hear from these people. They are driving people away with shit like this.
And yet, they're not wrong about the demographic either.
Not
are
entirely.
They?
Not entirely.
Not entirely wrong. And it also galls me that they're going to do this shit on a thing that you paid for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like paid to watch this. Not only are we going to show advertising, which is already janky, man, because you already paid to get in the door, but you're going to show advertising for this shit? I don't know.
Well, and that's you're not only are you showing advertising, it's like one of the first things they do on the pay-per-view broadcast. Run through a little bit of like the stand-up, welcome to UFC 323, and then they'll hit you with an ad for a movie. And like, you haven't seen a single fight yet. You paid them $80 for this shit. I mentioned this on Fight Night that is one thing I am not going to miss, is paying these people that kind of money and then sitting through ads anyway, when at least every other streaming service is like, "Hey, do you want to sit through the ads or do you want to pay the premium price? You can choose." The UFC is like, "No, you will do both."
Next question this week comes to us from Morris Sislak, who writes, "So our guy John Anik said that UFC 323 is the last pay-per-view, quote, until further notice on the broadcast. My question is, how many quarters of not having enough subscriber growth until Paramount puts the numbered events back on pay-per-view?" Now, I will say this. Dana White has said some different things about this. I saw him this week trumpeting how much cheaper it will be to be a UFC fan next year than it has been over the last several years, which is obviously great to hear him say that. Then he goes to the press conference and someone asks him about this fight card, and he's going on and on about how great it is. What he says is, "What a great way to close out the ESPN era."
Not the pay-per-view era.
Maybe it's just semantics, but I was kind of like, the interesting choice of words there, Mr. White.
I gotta say, I did not catch John Anik say this, but that makes me concerned a little bit. I mean,
well,
I know
they don't want to say last pay-per-view ever, right? You want to keep the door ajar to stick your foot in there later if you got something that you think people are going to pay for. I've already said there's no way on God's green earth that at some point they won't find an attraction that they're like, we can make motherfuckers pay more for this, but we're not going to. There's no way that happens.
I'm going to go on record right now and say there's no way we get through 2026 and they don't at least attempt it in some form. They're going to try it. They're absolutely going to try it. And again, it is up to us. It is up to us to put our foots collectively down and say, no, we are not going back. Because when they try it, it won't be right away, so it's like when they do finally try it, it will be very much like a trial. It'll be to see if we'll go for it. And if we won't, then they'll stop. So we have that power that in a way we've never had before. I also I think, we get to these moments like where it's easy to kind of talk ourselves into thinking everything's going to be different. And I do think in some ways, at least right off, there are at least going to be a few things that genuinely are different. But how many times have we been through some of this shit with the UFC where we'll tell ourselves something like that, and then we go, oh yeah, but it's the UFC. They kind of know one way to do things, and they're going to keep doing things that way. And I think that there is some awareness, at least like from what we hear from TKO executives, where they're like, pay-per-view, at least at this model, seems to be a dying thing. Unless you got something real, real good.
One night only type shit. Next question this week comes to us from Ryan Robinson on Patreon. He writes in to say, big news from the always honest, never a liar president. There are going to be 8 or 9 title fights on the President's Pageant UFC card in June. Which 8 or 9 titles do you want to see defended? Notably, the only American champ has a title defense scheduled against the GOAT Brazilian Amanda Nunes.
I mean, picture this for a minute. That we've seen fight cards before where there's like 3 title fights.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that can really drag on for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can have 3 back-to-back, 30-minute fights. Now, also imagine this. You got this big White House thing. You got, all the right-wing glitterati are out there in force. We're just taking the Epstein files and turning it upside down and dumping it out, and that's who's filling the seats at this event. And the shit, at least partially, is on CBS. Now, whether they do it entirely on CBS or whether they do part of it on CBS and then try to like funnel people to subscribe for Paramount Plus, whatever. But you're doing it at least partially as live network TV broadcast on CBS. And imagine you had 8 to 9 fights that could last 30 seconds or could last 30 minutes. That is a logistical nightmare for a live sports broadcaster or trying to like transition between fights and everything. Like you could end up with so much dead time of, Joe Rogan standing there just sort of ad-libbing into a TV camera. They don't want to do that. But I also feel like there is a long track record of this president just saying some stuff.
Saying shit.
Just out of nowhere, saying some stuff. And then people around him scrambling to try to make that stuff true. So, I mean, maybe we just start creating UFC titles.
We've done it before.
I mean, we did the BMF belt shit before. Maybe we're doing, the UFC Patriot champion, the UFC We the People champion, all kinds of shit.
They only got 11 titles, man. It's only 11 weight classes. If we're busting out 8 or 9 of them for one event, that's going to make those PLEs look a little suspect for most of the rest of the years. However, the first few we have seen do in fact look a little suspect, do they not? You got Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett fighting for an interim lightweight title. Then you got Volkanovski and the Fallout Boy in the featherweight title rematch. Absolutely nobody asked for, not even Diego Lopez. And then the just announced BMF title fight, right? Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira going to do it again, brother. So you start seeing these first few PLEs. I mean, none of them have what you might describe as a real marquee main event.
Well, this is the part about Trump's quote that I thought was like, now you're kind of being a dick.
No, fuck out of here. Being a dick? Come on.
The idea that you're saying, hey, Dana's already holding back fights to make it so that we can do this on my birthday because I'm a special, special boy. Like, that's what he said. He's holding back fights, which, especially if you're just starting out on Paramount, trying to convince people to make that switch, sign up for a Paramount Plus subscription. And the president of the United States just said, like, the first 6 months, we're not even going to give you anything good because we're loading it up. It's kind of a dick move a little bit.
That wouldn't be the first time that kind of shit has happened, right?
No, it would not.
Next question this week comes for us from Spoonie Love from Up Above, who writes, did you see the unfortunate video of Jamal Hill getting into a verbal spat with Joanna Jędrzejczyk over his girlfriend? It was due to Hill's girlfriend calling Jan Blachowicz washed, which caused Joanna to press her, which is hilarious because she, meaning Jamal Hill's girlfriend, is dating a washed fighter herself in Jamal Hill. Hill threatens to knock Joanna out if she, quote, touches his girl. Please discourse.
Yeah, that was not a great look for people. And it also made me go, have we not learned that you can't take Jamal Hill anywhere?
Guys can't be around people, man. He can't even be online around people.
No, he can't even be online around people who are trying to be nice to him. You want to bring him around fights like this and, have him get into something with you, Annie and Jake. The thing was, the line of it was where whatever had gone on between Joanna and his girlfriend, and then Jamal Hill says, if you touch my girl, I'm going to knock you the fuck out. And you're just like, everything that's going on with you want to be out here saying shit like that? And not just to some rando on the street, to Joanna and J-Chick, man. People are going to hear about that. It just, I guess at some point you have tried over and over again to tell us who you are, and we just need to accept that. But Jesus Christ, man. Can't bring some people anywhere.
I think we might know at this point who Jamal Hill is. Next question this week comes to us from Isaac Spooner, who asks, pouring one out over here for one of my guys, Edson Barboza. He's earned as long a career as he wants, but he did not need to be fighting a guy like Jalen Turner at 39 years old. I won't write his obituary. There are some peers he could beat, but man, that was a rough one. Stay frosty. Of course, your guy Edson Barboza goes out there, gets TKO'd 2 minutes and 24 seconds into the first round by Jalen Turner. And the sport can be brutal, man.
Yeah,
you feel like you get to know these guys, or at least you get to know them via watching them compete over and over again. Maybe you get to attach some kind of feeling to some of them, some kind of allegiance. Most everybody gets chewed up and spit out, man. Not very many people end their careers in this sport on uplifting victories. Let's just say that.
We set the scene for you of a late Saturday afternoon, early Saturday evening when these prelims were going on. I'd gone out with BK and the kids to get a Christmas tree. Brought that shit home, went through the struggle of getting it in the stand, making sure it's upright, making sure it's straight, getting all the ornaments out, all that stuff. I got the fights on mute so that I can listen to the Bob Dylan Christmas album, Christmas in the Heart.
Jesus Christ, dude. Jesus Christ.
Christmas in the Heart. That's a jam right there.
I mean, you're already off. You're already off to just a soul-crushing experience.
And I'm just kind of keeping an eye on these prelims. And then I see this happen to Edson Barboza. Picture me standing there with some goddamn tinsel in my hand. Ornament from 1991 in the other hand. And I'm just going, oh, God. I didn't need to see this. I didn't need this sadness in my life today. But there it was. That's the fight game for you.
Didn't need to hear that stuff either. Next question this week comes to us from Ivan Visilevich, aka Ivan the Terrible, who writes, subject line, 10-8 rounds are stupid. 10-8 rounds don't make sense in a 3-round fight. In boxing, you generally have 8, 10, or 12 rounds, so there's plenty of opportunity to regain a lost point. However, in MMA, if a fighter loses a round 10-8, their best outcome will be a tie, assuming it goes to a decision. You might think the math is better in a 5-round fight, but it's not a whole lot better. If a fighter loses the first round 10-8 and loses one more round later on, their best outcome is a tie. In other words, they need to win all 4 other rounds to win the fight. But how often does that happen when someone loses a round 10-8? If a fighter is dominated in one round but makes a heroic comeback and wins some rounds, shouldn't it be possible for them to win the fight? Shouldn't a scoring system be built around the idea of ensuring there is a winner? I don't think 10-8 rounds make any sense in MMA. The math just doesn't math. Now, I've been saying for a long time that the 10-point must scoring system just isn't, it's just not great for MMA. It's not from MMA. It wasn't designed for MMA. MMA is not only has fewer rounds, which makes it kind of unwieldy, but like it's just a more diverse sport than boxing. There's more shit out there happening. Different shit can happen and does. And the 10-8 round just has always seemed like something of a blunt tool to me to try to score this sport. People have talked about other ideas, half points, et cetera, et cetera. I still don't know that I've heard a single idea that I feel like is better or that would solve the problem. So it's an imperfect situation, let's say.
First of all, I want to say thank you to Ivan the Terrible
Yep.
for sending this question, even 500 years or so after his death. We do appreciate hearing from him. My counter to this, I understand the argument that Ivan the Terrible is making here by saying, like, hey, the 10-point must system puts you in a situation to, if you're doing 10-8 rounds, like it puts you in a situation where you're going to end up with some draws. But if we really incorporate the thinking that, hey, we'll give out more 10-8s, the thinking was we needed a way to differentiate in scoring the difference between winning a round by a razor thin margin and winning a round by a lot, and really dominantly putting it on the other guy for the course of one round. And so that's why we said 10-8, we'll say that, 10-9, we'll say the other thing. But if we really do buy into the idea that, hey, this is what a 10-8 round looks like, and we're not going to be scared to give them out, then if you are the recipient, if you are the 8 half of a 10-8 round, and you're like, shit, now what is the best I can do a draw? No, the best you could do, what's stopping you from going out in the next round and getting a 10-8? If we're really giving them out that way to recognize that, hey, somebody won a round by a lot very, very clearly, like they get a 10-8 rather than just the 10-9 of barely edging the other guy out, then you could go get yourself a 10-8 and then you're right back on even footing. Like, if we really just buy into that, then it shouldn't be such an obstacle. The only way we're thinking, hey, a 10-8 means fuck, you're kind of out of it, is because we're assuming how many 10-8 rounds are there going to be in any one given fight. You know, it's crazy if there's one, it's unusual. But if it doesn't need to be, like, I'm saying we could make the 10-point must system work a little better for MMA, but it's just people are so rigid in their thinking about it that they're scared to give out those 10-8s. And we go into it assuming, like, well, hey, yeah, what are the odds you're going to turn around and get a 10-8 on the other guy? Like, well, you could. If you really do pull off that comeback and start beating his ass, then it should just as easily be a 10-8 coming back to you.
Last question this week comes to us from David Lauderay, who writes, what was crazier, Petr Yan beating up Marab for 5 rounds or Illinois State taking out North Dakota State? We're in a simulation, aren't we? I'll tell you this, Ben, folks, come Thursday over there on the Patreon page, when we do our Doing the Damn Thing show and we get to our Chad's Grizz Talk segment, there's going to be some shit to talk about.
Yeah, I know. This blew the FCS playoffs wide open.
Whole new ball game, my friend. Whole new ball game.
Also, though, I just want people to understand this is the way it works in FCS playoff football, that the Grizz are like, big win over South Dakota State next week, hosting South Dakota.
Mm-hmm. And if they win that, probably going to play Montana State. So
yeah, so it's regionally, some places are more well represented than others in the FCS playoffs.
Well, maybe those other places should be better at football.
Maybe some of those other places are too good at football and therefore are in the higher league.
Just saying. Some maybe get better at football. All right, that's going to do it this week for listener mail. If you have a question, comment, or concern to air to the podcast in future weeks, you know how to do it. Go to the website co-mainevent.com and click the link in the top right-hand corner of the screen that says email the podcast. That'll get you in touch with us. Right now, Joshua Van is your men's flyweight champion. We'll talk about that. Oh, and the last fight night of the ESPN era.
Oh, yeah.
Right after this. Well, Ben, this is the kind of thing. No one wants to see it happen this way, man. Not Pantoja, not Joshua Van, not the fans, nobody. to see Alexander Pantoja fuck his arm all up trying to defend a takedown against Joshua Van less than 30 seconds into their flyweight title fight that was scheduled for 5 rounds. And I tell you what, for that first 20 seconds or so, it looked like these guys were going to have a firefight. Looked like they might be starting to shift into high gear for a good one here. And then this happens, and now you've got Joshua Van, at least for the time being, as your flyweight champ. Just a bummer, man. Bummer for everyone involved, and most especially Alexander Pantoja and his arm.
Yeah, man. I mean, it somehow makes it so much worse that even though it only went like 20, 30 seconds, it was already looking like they were going to get after it.
Yeah.
And then, boom, it's over. And I'll tell you what, I saw as it happened in real time. I saw, I couldn't really tell as he went down. But you could tell he's holding his arm weird. You could tell it just, that ain't what the arm is supposed to look like. I saw the beginning of the first replay of them showing it in slow motion to see what happened there. And then I turned away. I physically turned away from the screen because I've seen some of these before in MMA. Over 20 years of covering the sport, I've seen some shit like this. Maybe not exactly this one, but like other similar stuff. And I don't need to see any more. As soon as I saw what we were dealing with there, I was just like, nope. And I was sitting there looking at the wall in my house, listening to him be like, all right, let's take a look at the replay. And I'm just going, nope, I'm not going to. You guys knock yourselves out. You want to keep looking at that replay over and over again? You can. I refuse. And I have not seen it since then. I will not look at it again. Scrolling through a Twitter timeline or something, and I see somebody about to post that shit, and it's just like, no, you don't. I'm not ever going to see it again if I can help it.
Yeah. I guess it says something disgusting about me that I'm sitting at home, with dried blood all over my chin and torso. And I'm sitting there thinking I've seen worse. I've seen worse in this sport. Seen guys' legs go flopping all over the place.
Yeah.
Seen Tim Sylvia's arm bend right in the middle of the forearm. Seen worse. Still, though, pretty nasty to see the guy's elbow come apart this way with Joe Rogan screaming and cringing like a kid watching a slasher movie. He's gonna watch it, but he's looking between his fingers, covering his eyes and looking between his fingers because he actually still wants to see it. So it was a bad one, man. Pantoja obviously sees a very successful title defense or title reign, and what is it, 7? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, 5, excuse me. And so just a terrible situation. We got to run it back. We got to do it again. Yeah. And if you're Josh Van running around with the belt, I guess you're happy, but at the same time, are you though?
Okay. That brings up a question that I've seen people debating a fair bit this week is, was he too happy? Considering
we've seen this before. We've seen guys celebrating like they just won the Super Bowl when something happens like this. We've seen it before. In the moment, I'm kind of willing to forgive it, right?
Yeah. I am too, because it's such a big, especially he's 24 years old, goes in there against this established, scary, dominant champion, all kinds of nerves, probably all kinds of concerns. And then 20 seconds in, they tell you, that's it, it's over, and you're the new champ. Even if you didn't exactly knock him out in the all-out firefight, you're still, there's the caveman part of your brain is just saying, good.
Yeah.
No hurt and money, good. You're
shiny
just
belt.
You're just going to be excited. You won. You didn't get hurt at all. It's all over. The relief, the excitement, all of that. I don't blame you in the immediate aftermath. But afterwards, he did show up to the press conference with a toy belt version because the real one was too heavy, he said. And I think that, people aren't really going to look at this as like, well, you've dethroned Pantoja. You're the man because you beat the man. You're going to have to fight him again before people really look at you that way. The question is, will we be able to do that in a timely fashion?
Yeah. If you're Josh Van, you can act like that in the moment, but you got to stop now, right? You can't be showing up on Ariel's show this week in a "I broke Pantoja's arm" t-shirt, right? You got to be
unless you're a real savvy self-promoter and you're
Unless
just
you're
like,
going to,
I'm
if you're
leaning
going
into
to,
it.
if you're going a certain kind of way with it, I guess
Mhm.
so. But if you're a normal human, you got to show up this week and talk about how nobody wanted it to end like that, and you'll fight Pantoja again and all this other stuff. It is a pretty weird thing to have happen to Joshua Van this relatively early in his fighting life, right? Because now, man, it threatens to be the thing that defines your entire career, right? Depending on what you're able to do with it, I guess. But you don't want to necessarily be the guy. He's 25. You don't want to be the guy who people look back on and be like, oh yeah, he's the guy who won the title because Pantoja broke his arm, like doing a breakdance move while defending a takedown.
Yeah, I mean, it does depend a lot on what happens afterwards because, if you turn around and you win the rematch, then we go like, all right, yeah, hey, the first one was weird, but you proved that you weren't the champ just based on some accident of the universe, Or there's also a possible world out there where, depending on the timeline for recovery for Pantoja, you fight somebody else like Tetsuya Taira in the meantime, and you have a different opportunity. I mean, there's a very real potential world where by the time Pantoja comes back, Joshua Van is not the champion anymore.
Well, and that would be the worst for him.
Yeah, it would be.
Right? Then you're in a real bad situation because I don't know, man. It seems like you would have a lot of work to do to get back into that spot.
Yeah, that would be about as bad as it can go. It's just like right now, you come out of this fight where it's like you're the champion, but there is also absolutely nothing to take from that fight in any way. You weren't even in there long enough to where you could be like, I felt his power, I felt his strength, I know kind of what, like, you were barely in there long enough to even like get a sense of the range of how you two match up. Like, there's not a single thing that you can take away from that other than just like, well, that was fucking weird and gross, and you just got to move on and make the best of it.
Yeah. Well, you've heard the expression, it's all over but the shouting. At this point, it's all over besides Brandon Royval versus Manel Cape. Right? That's all you got left. Apex show. Last show of the ESPN era this Saturday. And I mean, at least we're ending on brand. Right? We're ending with with an Apex show that feels just very on brand to what the UFC, ESPN programming slate and relationship had become.
There is something about it that just feels right. Going out at the apex, going from a big pay-per-view that ended with an incredible fight, like a fight of the year candidate, including a fighter of the year candidate. Everybody goes to bed being like, wow, this fucking sport. And you're like, don't forget, we're back next week with some bullshit from a warehouse.
And Dana White's going to say, what a way to close out the ESPN era when you still got one left. Still one next week. I don't want to leave that out. How are you going to look back on this, man? The ESPN era. I feel like, we've talked about before, but this is the way these UFC relationships go. Everyone starts out hugging and kissing friends and family. You're so excited to have you around here, and then by the end, you're referring to it as Spuke TV instead of Spike TV. We're doing our best to make it look like an amicable breakup with Fox Sports, but everybody behind the scenes is saying that shit kind of fell apart toward the end. Now you got the ESPN deal where I don't know, man. Reports, we've heard stuff that ESPN wasn't super happy with what they were getting. I think everybody looked at the quality of the fight cards over not just now, but over the recent past, and we're thinking this isn't great. How are we going to think about this now that it's over?
It's difficult because feels like we have lived many lives during the ESPN era.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of that is just even due to anything having to do with the ESPN or the UFC. I mean, we had the goddamn pandemic happen in there, and that reshaped everything, but including this sport and how it operates. The future of fighting really took hold in a sort of Twilight Zone kind of way. The whole Apex thing, that all happened during the ESPN era. We saw it reflected on ESPN, but it wasn't necessarily because of ESPN. And so it's hard to separate out all that stuff and know here's what to make of this one broadcast partnership and here's what to make of this time period in general, but also this time period in the growth and development of the sport, But it'll definitely, and maybe we'll just, one of the things that won't change when we move over to Paramount is we'll just get used to like UFC Apex that's on Paramount Plus. But it's right now kind of etched in my mind when I think of the ESPN era. I can't not think of, and here's another throwaway fight night card from the Apex with 12 people in the crowd. You can hear every little thing, and it just sounds small time and unimportant and feels small time and unimportant. That has to be a part of it. Also getting that email once a year from ESPN being like, changes to your ESPN Plus membership. No, it's not going down in price.
Will the Paramount Plus app work better?
Could it work worse?
How many times am I going to have to log in a row before it lets me actually log in? That's what I want to know. How many times will I log in only to have the page refresh and it'll say, do you want to sign up for ESPN Plus? No, I already have it. I just want to sign in.
That's the thing that gets me, man, is when it'll show me up in the corner, I'm logged in, and then it's like, you should consider signing up for a membership. And I'm like, motherfucker, you know that I have one. I'm signed into that account right now. Or when I'll go to watch a fight, and it'll not like I'm looking deep in the archives. It'll be a fight that happened last weekend, and you got it on your homepage. And I'll be like, yes, show me that fight. And then they'll show a message that's just like, can't show you this fight right now. Try again later. Don't even really bother to give you like a fake technical reason why. It's just like, nah, I don't feel like it right now. Fuck you, ESPN.
I kind of hope Paramount's taking notes, at least. I hope the people who run Paramount are looking around, looking at the history, looking about how these things go, looking at what people are paying the UFC for and what they end up getting over the long term, because they paid a lot of money. They paid a lot of money for the UFC, potentially as part of a much larger deal where did you get blackmailed? Not saying you did, not saying you didn't, but there was a lot of ins and outs, a lot of what have yous, a lot of things happened in and around the Paramount Skydance merger, and then all of a sudden we're given the UFC, as several billions.
Well, it does seem like Paramount is out here just looking for people to give billions to. We're out here just fucking.
Hey, we're here. We're out here. We got a product.
Maybe here's what we need. We need to work up some kind of bidding war between Paramount Plus and the Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund.
Mm-hmm.
Get them. Yeah. Tell them, the other one is really hot for the CME. And tell you what, if they can add the CME to their portfolio, then they will grow into such a giant of the media industry. They will crush you. Can't have that. Mm-hmm. Got to buy the CME just to survive.
It's the thing that the entire welfare of your company hinges on.
These two guys sitting in different rooms, the opposite sides of Missoula, Montana, reading
talking
questions
to each other on the internet
from Mo, the bartender on The Simpsons, and Ivan the Terrible.
Yep, that's how it goes. All right, that's going to do it this week for the Co-Main Event podcast. We're over on the Patreon page the rest of the week. Come over there and join us. We got the live chat tomorrow, and then doing the damn thing on Thursday, followed by the Patreon Power Hour on Friday, a full 60 minutes of curated MMA talk. Patreon.com/co-main event. We'd love to see you over there. If we don't, we'll see you right back here next week. As for right now, we're done. We're through. We're out. This show's worth at least a couple billion. right?
Yeah, I mean, no, we're not asking for anything crazy. We're not asking for like, Warner Brothers money or anything. Just like break off a couple billion.
Yeah, just let us wet our beaks a little bit. We could be like, "What'd you pay for the UFC?" We'll take half of that. It's like that seems fair. Half.
Just let us get a Billy, you know?
Half seats. Just a little, just a one Billy. How about that?